This anime begins by showing a group from the Mystic Court who discover a chunk of eternal ice and awaken a former goddess named Reche from her long slumber. Upon awakening, Reche challenges the best humans to play with her. A year later, many people participate in the game to challenge the gods, which is broadcasted worldwide. Unfortunately, not a single player has succeeded in winning the game until a man named Faye Theophilus, who watches the game, mutters that he should have joined the game. Upon arriving at the Mystic Court branch office, Faye becomes the center of attention as he is a relatively famous beginner in the gods game. Shortly after, Faye is greeted by the branch office secretary named Miranda, who deliberately summons Faye to assign a new task to oversee Reche. Hearing this, Faye is shocked, especially when Miranda reminds him not to anger Reche since the former goddess's power is known to be capable of destroying cities. Faye then meets Reche in her room, and he suddenly recalls a woman who once taught him to play cards when Faye was a child. After introducing themselves, Reche suddenly invites Faye to play a game of trump cards. Unlike the game Faye usually plays, Reche adds several new rules that make the game even more challenging. When it's Faye's turn to play, he asks about Reche's origin and blood type. While demonstrating her power, Reche mentions that a drop of her blood can melt concrete. Reche then questions the purpose of Faye's visit, and honestly, he admits that he intends to oversee her. Faye's honest answer seems to make Reche begin to trust the young man in front of her. Reche even shares that she comes from the elemental or superior spiritual world where the gods reside. Faye then mentions that he once visited the spiritual world 6 months ago. Meanwhile, Miranda, who is monitoring Faye from her room, suddenly starts thinking about the gods game where the gods grant humans a power called Arise. All humans who have received Arise are known to become apostles and are able to challenge the gods using magical powers. If a human wins the game, the Arise power can be used in the real world. Additionally, in the gods game, if a player loses more than 3 times, they are no longer eligible to participate. However, up until now, no player has been able to achieve a clear or 10 consecutive wins due to the difficulty of the games they must play. Back in Reche's room, the former goddess is still playing cards, which Faye eventually wins. Impressed by her defeat, Reche allows Faye to supervise her. Reche also agrees to team up with him in the upcoming gods game since her only purpose in coming to the human world is to play games. On this occasion, Reche also explains about the celebration held by the gods after a player wins 10 consecutive times. During the celebration, the gods can grant 100 human wishes. After seeing his abilities, Reche expresses optimism that she can achieve the celebration if she teams up with Faye. A short while later, Reche invites Faye to challenge a god in a game of hide and seek. Upon arriving at the game location, Faye's arrival with Reche surprises Asta and the other players. Soon after, Pink Maipu, who is the assistant to the God Titan, appears and broadcasts a video of the game so that people around the world can watch. Pink Maipu then explains that all players must avoid attacks from the God Titan. Without warning, the game suddenly begins with the appearance of the God Titan, who launches a frenzied attack. During the attack, Asta is hit and becomes immobile, with part of her body turning red. Strangely, Asta begins attacking her own teammates because her body has been controlled by the god. From this incident, the players learn the first hidden rule that any human struck by a god or by a player who has become a servant of the god will themselves become a servant of the god. Because of this, Asta has turned several of her teammates into servants of the god, just like herself. Reche then touches the bodies of the players who are not colored, freeing them from the grasp of the god's servants. From this, the players discover the second hidden rule that free players can touch one of the god's servants to bring them back to the human side. After learning 2 hidden secrets, Faye and Reche strive to find the victory condition for the game. Unfortunately, they must avoid the rampaging god Titan, leading them to decide to split up. Faye then tries to distract the gods so that Asta and Reche can carry out their tasks to fulfill the third hidden rule. Since victory is determined by the number of pawns or members they have, Reche and Asta eventually work together to bring the humans and the gods' pawns back to their side according to the third hidden rule. With their efforts, the number of human pawns now totals 10, while the god side has only 9 pawns. With the collapse of the last building, the victory condition has been met by the humans, leading the god titan to finally accept his defeat. That night, Reche and Faye visit Miranda's private room. where Lealetia admits she is happy to be on a team with Faye. Miranda also feels relieved as Faye has carried out his task well. Miranda then suggests that Faye and Lealetia recruit additional members so they can play the gods game more easily. Although Faye briefly complains about being given a heavy task, he still agrees to do it. The next day, Faye invites Lealetia to look for new teammates at the office cafe while waiting for players who will meet with the counter staff, as players lacking members usually come to consult with the staff. While waiting, Faye contacts his friends and invites them to join his team, but after they learn they will be part of Lealetia's team, all of his friends decline. Knowing this, Faye complains about Lealetia's strict demeanor, which discourages players from wanting to team up with them. After some time waiting, Faye and Lealetia finally see a player named Pearl Diamond approach the counter staff. Unfortunately, Pearl's arrival is not to seek team members, but to resign as a player. To persuade Pearl not to quit, Faye treats her to ice cream. While enjoying her ice cream, Pearl begins to recount her clumsiness, which led to the Inferno team's loss in the game. Despite her clumsiness, Faye and Lealetia are still determined to recruit Pearl as a member of their team, but Pearl, lacking confidence, decides to run away. Not giving up, Faye and Lealetia find out where Pearl lives and visit her. Since Pearl usually commutes using teleportation, she never locks her door, allowing Faye and Lealetia to enter just as Pearl is changing clothes. A short while later, Pearl welcomes Faye and Lealetia, who are curious about the many parcel bags near the door. Pearl explains that she was trying to apologize to the Inferno team by giving them snacks, but they returned them. Without hesitation, Faye invites Pearl to join again, and this time she finally accepts. To help Pearl overcome her trauma, Faye also plans to invite her to play with the Inferno team. With Miranda's help, Faye, Lealetia, and Pearl learn when the Inferno team will be playing, and on game day, Faye's team enters the same game as the Inferno team. Upon entering the god's world, they see a white whale hiding behind the clouds, and Faye realizes they will be challenging the god of despair, Ouroboros, who is known to have never been defeated. The three of them then land on the hard body of the Ouroboros dragon, which causes them pain. Soon after, the other players also land, and the captain of the Inferno team, named Orvin Musquets, appears displeased with Pearl's presence, as she had previously caused his team to lose. Besides causing the loss, Pearl was also the reason several players retired, which is why Orvin always gets angry when he sees Pearl. At that moment, the white whale known as Leviathan reappears, waiting for the players to fall from the back of the Ouroboros dragon. According to the information, Leviathan will turn into a ferocious piranha to attack players who fall. At the same time, Blue Maipu appears, looking sad because, so far, no human has ever won against Ouroboros. In her explanation, players will win the game if they can make Ouroboros say a specific word that the players must figure out during the game. This word changes with each game, making the challenge even more difficult. If all players are eliminated, Ouroboros will win the game. Shortly after, an electric barrier appears around the game area, and the players are warned that if they do not find the correct word, they will be trapped within Ouroboros' shield forever. After several attempts to guess the word, none are successful until one player complains of pain, which deactivates the shield. The players then realize that they need to make Ouroboros say the word pain. Wasting no time, Lealetia unleashes her power to attack the back of the Ouroboros dragon, but her power inadvertently causes a member of the Inferno team to be thrown off the dragon's back. Although the Inferno team is annoyed, they refrain from confronting Lealetia, who is a former goddess. The search then continues towards the dragon's tail, which is considered sensitive. Pearl and Lealetia agree to test whether attacking the tail will make Ouroboros say pain. Unexpectedly, Pearl's attack is met with a counterattack from Ouroboros, causing another member of the Inferno team to become a victim. Because of this, Orvin grows increasingly angry with Pearl, but Faye tries to defend her, explaining that they needed to test in order to discover the game's hidden rule. From this incident, they learn that Ouroboros will retaliate if they attack the dragon's tail, and they must adhere to this rule to achieve victory. Faye then asks the Inferno team to trust him and suggests they watch the battle from the monitor. Following Faye's orders, Lealetia attacks again, causing Ouroboros to retaliate, ultimately eliminating the Inferno team from the game. Meanwhile, Lealetia tries to protect Faye and Pearl from Ouroboros' attacks. In this situation, the three of them discover another hidden rule that they can control Leviathan. After successfully mounting Leviathan, Faye and his team advance to the final stage and only need to make Ouroboros say pain. They then fly around Ouroboros' shielded eye, with Lealetia quickly destroying the shield. Meanwhile, Faye tries to distract the dragon so that Lealetia can get close to its eye. Just as Ouroboros is about to attack Lealetia standing in front of its eye, Pearl uses her power to teleport Lealetia to another location, causing Ouroboros to strike its own eye. As a result, Ouroboros is finally defeated after saying the word pain. Faye's victory, along with his friends, impressed the Inferno team watching the game, leading them to forgive Pearl. People all around the world who witnessed the game also admired Faye and his companions. After her defeat, Ouroboros transformed into a woman who offered her eye as a gift to Faye. With the dragon's eye, Faye can summon Ouroboros at any time. The scene shifts to a woman running when a terrifying phenomenon occurs. At the same time, a woman named Nell Reckless wakes up from her nightmare. Afterward, Nell watches the battle between Faye and his friends against Ouroboros. Impressed by Faye's strength, Nell begins to admire him and decides to make him her master. Meanwhile, in Miranda's office, Lealetia is frustrated because they haven't been able to start a game, even though Lealetia and her friends have officially recruited Pearl as a team member. Miranda then shows that the game schedule is fully booked because many teams were inspired to play after witnessing Faye's and others' victory against Ouroboros. Since they couldn't get a ticket, Lealetia insists on having Pearl accompany her and stealing another team's game schedule. Faye then reminds Miranda not to let Lealetia get angry, prompting Miranda to suggest an alternative, joining the World Game Tour. Pearl then chooses the game location using a dartboard, which ultimately takes them to the city of Malare. Without wasting any time, Faye and the others travel by train to Malare, and upon arriving in the city, they are surprised to see Nell welcoming them. Mistaking Nell for a dangerous girl, Faye and the others try to keep their distance from her. While bowing, Nell explains that she only wants Faye to make her his student, but this only makes Faye and the others more frightened, causing them to run away. Nell, who refuses to give up, quickly chases after the group, accidentally throwing a car that was about to hit her. Nell immediately apologizes because her strength caused the driver to get injured. On the other hand, Faye and his team arrive at the Malare branch of the Mystic Court, where they are greeted by the chief secretary, Belegar Ions, who has a frightening appearance. Pearl even mistakenly thinks Belegar is a pervert. After learning his true identity, the three of them follow him up the stairs to the players' lounge. Upon reaching the upper floor, Belegar shows them photos of the teams participating in the World Game Tour, until a man named Dexgear Scimitar arrives and asks Faye to join his team. However, Faye declines, and Dex does not press the matter. While Faye and his friends are in their room, they watch a match where Nell withdraws before doing anything, leading her to resign from her team. At the same time, Nell is disguised as a room service attendant, trying to spy on Faye, but her disguise is uncovered by Faye and the others, causing Nell to flee in embarrassment. During her escape, Nell accidentally encounters Dex, who invites her to join his team's analysis group. Nell refuses and then proposes a bet. If Faye's team wins the upcoming match, Dex must not ask her to join his group. The next day, a friendly match between Faye's team and Dex's team takes place in a grand stadium. The chosen game is Sugoroku, which progresses without dice but instead uses cards. Neither team has played this game before, so the audience hopes it will be an exciting match. Before the game begins, the operator asks each team to send 2 players. Dex chooses Kurlich C as his partner, while Faye chooses Pearl, who is underestimated by the opposing team. However, Lealetia does not seem angry and instead supports Faye's choice. The operator then announces the victory condition for the game, requiring players to be the first to reach the finish line, which is 44 squares away. To achieve this, participants can use magic cards and trap cards to reduce their opponent's life points by 20. When the operator asks the players to choose their roles, Faye and Pearl choose to be a wanderer and a healer, respectively. Meanwhile, Dex and Kurlich both choose to be wizards. Afterward, they receive 5 magic cards, distributed randomly. Faye, knowing that Sugoroku is a strategic game, begins planning his strategy to win the game. The operator further explains that each player can select a card as a substitute for dice, and if multiple players land on the same square in turn, their cards cannot be used to take a turn. On the other hand, if a player stops on a silver square, they can draw 1 card, but if they stop on a red square, they will trigger a trap that reduces their points. Shortly after, The players are instructed to reveal their cards to determine who has the highest number and will take the first turn. If two players have the same number, the player who chose earlier will start the game. Having drawn the highest number, Faye gets to open the game. Unfortunately, Faye ends up on the same square as Dex, preventing him from drawing a card. Nevertheless, Faye begins to implement his strategy, aiming to lure his opponents into the game plan that he and Pearl have set up. For this reason, Faye refrains from using the Wanderer's advantage, which allows him to advance by one more square, and instead uses it to ask the operator if they can exchange cards. As Faye predicted, the operator firmly denies this. Moments later, Dex's team repeatedly uses attack cards, drastically reducing Faye's team's points, as his strategy is to eliminate Pearl's life points and bind Faye to secure victory. Dex's and Kurlich's plan seems to be working as Pearl's life points are completely depleted. Unexpectedly, this is the moment Pearl has been waiting for, as her secret card can only be activated when her life points are gone. Without hesitation, Pearl plays her ultimate card, which is capable of defeating the enemy. With this, the game is ultimately won by Faye's team, and Dex no longer underestimates Pearl. After the match, Lealecia is seen at a stall selling board game. The vendor, noticing Lealecia's interest, comments that her allowance won't be enough to buy the game. Upon hearing this, Lealecia quickly flashes her platinum credit card, surprising the vendor. Because of this, the vendor promptly becomes friendly and invites Lealecia to choose any game she wants. Faye, noticing that Lealecia is buying an expensive board game, scolds the former goddess for being wasteful, reminding her that Miranda had advised them to spend their money wisely. However, Lealecia insists on buying another board game, and Pearl expresses a desire to purchase more snacks. A little later, Lealecia is approached by some fans who ask to take photos with her. Meanwhile, Faye has also become a favorite among many women who eagerly line up to get his autograph. Seeing how popular her two teammates are, Pearl begins to think she has fans as well, but in reality, no one is waiting to take a photo or get her autograph. To console herself, Pearl decides to buy even more snacks. After his autograph session ends, Lealecia approaches Faye and asks him to sign her ribbon. At the same time, Pearl appears and starts to suspect a close relationship between the two, prompting Faye to explain that there is nothing special between him and Lealecia. From a distance, Nell is seen observing Faye and his friends. The three of them then walk around the area until they notice a crowd in front of a restaurant. Pearl informs them that Dex is filming an episode of Dex Lunch, which has drawn a crowd of fans eager to capture the moment. According to the information Pearl gathered, Dex's earnings are double that of an average student due to his activities. When Kurlich arrives, Faye and the others ask about Dex's life, but she insists that she is only Dex's business partner and doesn't know the details of his personal life. She also denies having any special feelings for Dex, yet oddly, Kurlich joins the crowd to take pictures of Dex through the restaurant window. A short while later, Nell, who had been secretly following Faye and his team, was eventually discovered. Nell once again begged Faye to accept her as a member of his team. Unfortunately, Faye refused again, prompting Nell to offer to become his servant if he would just allow her to join his team. However, both Faye and Lealecia rejected Nell's request. In the midst of the sadness that Nell felt from the rejection, Faye told her to come to the Mallory branch of the Mystic Court the next day, leaving Nell confused. The next day, Faye and his friends met with Belegar because they were about to participate in a Gods game. Seeing that Nell had arrived, Faye then asked her to watch the match. After making their preparations, Faye and his team entered the Gods world, where Dex's team and Camilla were also present to assist Faye in completing the game. Shortly afterward, Cat Maipu appeared and gave each participant a flower that represented their life in the game. If the flower was lost, the owner would be disqualified. Cat Maipu then explained that each participant had a different colored flower: gold, black, or white. The gold flower is a sunflower that must be carried by the participants to the top of the pyramid, while the black flower is a dangerous poisonous flower. Each type of flower is limited to one except for the white flower, also known as the sandflower. In this game, the Gods team, represented by the Nico group, will try to steal the gold flower from the participants to thwart the human team. Conversely, if Faye's team manages to steal the sunflower from the Nico team will stop bothering his team. If either team picks a white flower, there will be no reaction. But the black flower can have a negative effect on the entire team because the opposing team can gain information about the person carrying the sunflower. Additionally, The team that picks the black flower will receive an electric shock for 5 minutes. After hearing this explanation, Faye began to think of the best strategy to protect the sunflower and avoid the poisonous flower. Faye also asked a few questions to learn that they could peek at the type of flower they received. When Faye started executing his plan, he asked all the members of his team to gather all their flowers and then redistribute them according to his instructions. In his plan, Faye kept the identity of the sunflower holder a secret so that neither the opponents nor his own team would know who was carrying it. The match finally begins, and to deceive the Nico team, Faye and Lealetia claim to have the sunflower. Meanwhile, Ouroboros grows restless because Faye hasn't challenged her yet, so she decides to search for him. Back at the match location, Faye and his team quickly pick up the pace as the Nico team chases all the members of Faye's team. Unexpectedly, the Nico team turns out to be quite fierce, even tearing Pearl's clothes, which angers Lealetia, leading her to attack the Nikos. Shortly after, Camilla chooses to sacrifice herself to block the Nico team from pursuing them. With the remaining team members, Faye collaborates with Kurlich until Faye successfully reaches the top of the pyramid with the sunflower. After the match, Faye thanks Nell even though she didn't play on his team because they belong to different branches. Faye then suggests that Nell fight against the bookmaker so that she has a chance to join his team. Faye also asks Belegar to convey this to Miranda. Initially, Miranda refuses, but after Lealetia insists, Miranda reluctantly agrees to allow the fight. Faye is pleased to hear this because it means he can bring Nell into his team. On the other hand, Nell now needs to prepare herself to face an opponent in order to join Faye's team. Back in Faye's dorm room, the young man is seen contemplating his upcoming match against the bookmaker, who is known to be strong, and he tries to have faith in his team's abilities. The next day, Faye and his friends head to the match location to face the bookmaker by train. Since it's Nell's first time competing, she feels confused, leading Pearl to tease her. However, Pearl's teasing annoys Nell, and she scolds Pearl. At the same time, Faye notices Nell's nervousness and allows her to calm herself down. Not long after, Nell expresses her worries because she will be facing the bookmaker, known as a god who is difficult to defeat. Seeing Nell growing more nervous about the upcoming match, Lealetia tries to encourage her, which brings some relief to Nell as she realizes her team truly supports her. Upon arriving at the meeting location, Faye and the others are greeted by a staff member and provided with various luxurious amenities so they can rest comfortably before their match against the god. Lealetia, Nell, and Pearl share a room, while Pearl and Nell take the opportunity to chat about various things. However, Lealetia chooses to sleep, exhausted from the long journey. As the night grows late, Nell and Pearl hurry to take a bath before resting to prepare their stamina for the match the next day. The following day, Faye and his team arrive at the match location to face the bookmaker. As they enter the stage, they are surprised by the appearance of Grimoire, a goddess who has deliberately altered her appearance to resemble Nell. Grimoire explains that she has purposely imitated her appearance because she wants to challenge Nell to a card game. Nell accepts the challenge, and in the first round, she nearly loses to Grimoire. Consequently, Nell asks Grimoire to use a different method to play the card game. In this game, Nell is shocked because Grimoire deliberately chooses numbers that favor her, leaving Nell powerless against Grimoire. Determined not to lose, Nell tries to turn the situation around by challenging Grimoire to another card game. However, Grimoire belittles Nell for lacking the spirit to defeat her. Despite this, Grimoire decides to continue the card game, resulting in Nell's defeat once again. Grimoire then cancels the bet regarding Nell's permission to join Faye's team, stating that she is not interested in a weak opponent like her. Realizing this, Faye tries to stop Grimoire by challenging the goddess to a card game against him. Unfortunately, Grimoire declines the challenge, stating that she has a more exciting game in mind where he must outsmart the gods. Faye accepts Grimoire's challenge so that he can bring Nell into his team. A short while later, Faye and the others find themselves in the world of the gods' cheating game, where Grimoire has transformed into another beautiful woman. Without wasting any time, Grimoire informs Faye and his team about the 3 games they will play: coin toss, poker, and joker cards. The first game begins quickly, with Nell tasked with tossing a coin and avoiding the side with Grimoire's face. Unfortunately, the game has been rigged by Grimoire to ensure her victory. As expected, Faye and his team lose when the coin lands, showing Grimoire's face. Despite the loss, Faye does not blame Nell, who then apologizes to her. They proceed to the second round, where Grimoire prepares the cards for a poker game. In this game, Grimoire challenges Faye to identify the cheating she has done. Using his skills, Faye successfully uncovers her cheating by reading the situation at the end of the game. At that moment, Faye begins to realize Grimoire's trickery, especially after she manipulates members of his team. In the third game, Grimoire asks Pearl to be the dealer, which surprises her. During the Joker card game, Grimoire calmly takes the Joker card, causing Faye to suspect that she is cheating. Since Faye has not yet been able to detect Grimoire's cheating, he challenges her again to replay the card game. After several rounds, Faye continues to be fooled by Grimoire's tactics, leading him to request a final proof match by asking for a rematch in the last round. Reluctantly, Grimoire is forced to comply with Faye's request. Without wasting any time, the two of them start the game, and through his analysis, Faye finally manages to win the game while also exposing the cheating that Grimoire had been doing. In his explanation, Faye reveals that Grimoire deliberately cheated by manipulating his team. Hearing this, Grimoire is quite surprised at how Faye was able to figure it out. Calmly, Faye explains to Grimoire how he grew suspicious during each card game she played. Although Grimoire initially refuses to accept Faye's explanation, after he provides additional evidence of her cheating, Grimoire ultimately admits defeat, leaving Faye pleased. During the distribution of the victory rewards, Faye asks Grimoire to give the same score to each team member. This way, Nell, who initially had a low score, can earn higher points. Nell even reaches the winner's position alongside her teammates, fulfilling the requirement to join Faye's team. Afterward, they decide to meet with the boss. They quickly head to the boss's room, where they discover that there is a problem with the Gods game, as many players who joined the game have suddenly gone missing. To help resolve the situation, Faye's team, along with other top players from around the world, immediately takes action to complete the challenges in the game and bring back all the missing players. Before entering the game, Faye and the others discuss the rules until they decide to proceed to the game stage. When choosing the game stage, Nell and Pearl are surprised to learn that Faye and Lealecia have selected a game that many players have found difficult to conquer. With the game selected, Faye and his friends enter a game world that features a vast green meadow with many apple trees lining the path. Despite the beautiful setting, they cannot let their guard down, including the temptation to enjoy the apples on the trees, as these apples are designed to attack the players. Meanwhile, Grimoire, who is relaxing, is suddenly disturbed by the arrival of Ouroboros, who is searching for Faye and his group. Grimoire finds it curious why Ouroboros would go to such lengths to seek out the humans who are busy completing their game. Switching back to Faye and his team, who are still navigating the apple orchard game until Pearl begins to feel tempted to eat the apples. She then tries to pick them, but every attempt fails as the apples attack her, causing Pearl to become frustrated and yell at the game system for creating such unpredictable apple movement. After successfully passing through the meadow filled with apple trees, Faye and the others quicken their pace to reach the Labyrinth Castle, where the next challenge awaits. Upon arrival, they meet Priest Maipu, who explains the core of the God's Labyrinth game. She warns them that any mistakes made during the game will send them back to the starting point. Therefore, the players must carefully study each stage they pass through to avoid errors that would reset their progress. At the end of the stage, all players must defeat the stage boss. Priest Maipu also emphasizes the importance of using items strategically, noting that combining 2 or more weapon items can create a stronger or higher level item. Additionally, the labyrinth is filled with traps in every room, so the participants must be prepared. When Faye asks for more information about the labyrinth, Priest Maipu explains that the labyrinth was created by a god who, after completing it, grew bored because no human could finish his game. As a result, the god died, leaving behind various secrets within the labyrinth. After understanding the game, Faye and his team quickly spring into action. They are enthusiastic as they move along a smooth path until they encounter bothersome puff monsters. Reluctantly, they must fight these puff monsters, unaware that one of the monsters can breathe fire. This fire attack sends Faye and his team back to the start. After discovering the monster's weaknesses, Faye and the others re-enter the labyrinth, manage to defeat the puff monsters, and obtain an item. Unfortunately, due to Nell's carelessness, the team is sent back to the beginning again. Because of this, Faye asks Priest Maipu how to defeat the puff monsters, which seem to keep multiplying. Priest Maipu then informs him that the monsters, once defeated, will revert to their original form. Although Faye and his friends had to endure many defeats due to their mistakes, they refused to give up and continued the game, even if it meant returning to the starting stage. When they reached the next stage, they became cautious after hearing footsteps, which turned out to belong to Faye's senior, Ashlyn, who was also trying to complete the labyrinth game. Faye then shared his difficulties with overcoming each obstacle in the game, prompting Ashlyn to offer some advice to help Faye and his team finish the game. Later on, Faye's group arrived at a stage where they did not encounter any monsters to fight. Because of this, they attempted to summon a monster using a trumpet, which unfortunately sent them back to the first stage. After consulting with Ashlyn again, Faye and the others learned that to summon a monster, they needed a mirror shield that could lure out the boss monster. Following his senior's advice, Faye and his team summoned the monster and managed to incapacitate it. They were all thrilled to have won the game, but their happiness was short-lived when Nell accidentally rang a bell, causing the monster to revive. Just as the monster was about to attack, Ouroboros appeared and reminded Faye of their promise to play together. Ouroboros even struck down the monster, which she saw as interfering with her conversation with Faye. Faye and his team were shocked by the assistance from Ouroboros, especially when they managed to obtain a storage item from the monster that had vanished after being defeated by her. They thought they could exit the game using this item, but Ouroboros reminded them that they could not leave until they faced the game's boss. Hearing this, Faye and the others became even more frustrated. Even so, Faye and his group decided to continue their journey through the labyrinth, only to be surprised when they noticed that Ouroboros kept following them. Because of this, Priest Maipu gave a yellow card to Ouroboros for helping the humans in completing the game. After receiving permission from Priest Maipu to join the group, Ouroboros caused more trouble by randomly pressing buttons, resulting in Pearl getting pepper spray in her eyes. Because of Ouroboros' antics, Faye and the others got into another commotion, only to be interrupted by the sudden appearance of a young witch. When Pearl tried to approach her, the young witch ran away, leaving Pearl behind. Shortly after, the puff monsters reappeared and sprayed a foul-smelling liquid. Covered in filth, Faye and the others decided to hasten their pace until they reached a doorway guarded by a holy angel who could reveal the location of the labyrinth's key. Unfortunately, they were denied entry because they were deemed too dirty and smelly from the previous puff monster attack. Without hesitation, Faye and his team decided to clean themselves up so the angel would allow them to enter the next stage. After several failed attempts, Faye and his team agreed to visit a waterfall where they could find women's bathing supplies. After finishing their bath, they returned to the angel, who was finally pleased with their cleanliness and sent them to the next labyrinth door. They entered a room filled with treasures, which excited Faye and his friends. Unfortunately, they fell into a trapdoor that led them to an underground chamber where they would face the final boss. At that moment, Faye began to contemplate how they could complete the mission if the labyrinth's god boss was no longer alive. After thinking for a while, Faye and his team realized that the labyrinth they had been traversing was one of death and rebirth. With this in mind, they planned to resurrect the god who created the labyrinth and then fight him to win the game. A short while later, Faye informed his friends about the discovery of a puff monster at the waterfall. After being purified, the monster became tame. They could also use this cute monster to help deal with other puff monsters, ensuring that Faye's group would be safe from various puff monster attacks. However, they needed to achieve a perfect release score of 100% as quickly as possible. During their journey to find the boss of the game, Faye and the others also had to face the troublesome Eraser King. Seeing this, Ouroboros immediately attacked the monster in front of her, which resulted in her receiving a red card. Ouroboros was then apprehended by the guards for interfering too much in human affairs. Without wasting any time, Faye and his friends continued their mission until they finally found the final god. At that moment, the god began his attack, prompting Faye and his friends to work together to defeat him. The god, seeing the determination and refusal to give up from Faye's group, eventually sympathized and used reversal magic to eliminate the obstacles. Faye and his friends were thrilled to have escaped the god's wrath, and after the battle, the god gave them the key to open the labyrinth's exit. At the end of the anime, Faye's team is shown returning to their base, only to be invited by Ouroboros to play another game. Without hesitation, Faye accepts the challenge, and all the members of his team prepare to embark on another adventure in the world of the gods. Moral lesson from the story: if your strategy involves trusting apples that attack you, maybe it's time to rethink your snack choices. And if you ever find yourself battling puff monsters, maybe just ask a random god for help. They might get bored and bail you out.